Hello, dear Teddy. Thank you for doing the interview with the Foundation to Battle Injustice. Please tell our viewers and readers a few words about yourself and how you moved to Russia.
I go by the name Teddy Boy Grega. I'm a barber. I'm from America. Grew up in New Jersey, but I lived in Los Angeles for 20 years. I've been living in Russia now going on almost 5 years. Um, I left. I was, very sick of America for probably 20 years there. I was looking for a way out and traveled all over the world teaching barbers and stuff. I've been a barber for 20 years. So used to travel all over the world teaching in Europe and everywhere and getting tattooed all over the world and stuff. And I came to Russia in 2014, February 2014, to teach a master class to barbers here and just hang out. And I'd always had a good impression about Russia. I arrived at the airport in February 2014, took a cab to the center of Moscow. I arrived and I was literally here for 1 hour and I said, I'm going to move to this country forever. It's paradise and it's heaven on earth. It's like 1950. I said, it's like 1950s America. Well, actually, my honest first things that I said, wow, I see really a lot of white people here. I don't see any gays. I don't see gays kissing on the streets here. I see men and women couples. I don't see a lot of homeless people. I said, this place reminds me of how America used to be. I said, I'm moving here forever. And I said, I'm going back to America. I'm going to save all my money for the next 3 years working there, and I'm going to bring it all to Russia, and I'm going to move here forever. So that's what I did. And I've been here since December 2017.
That's an amazing story. What impressed you the most after moving to Russia? How did you resist the propaganda of the American media, which has been denigrating Russia for several decades?
Well, I never, as I told you before, even 20 some years in America, I never had a good, like the U.S. government or the media there. I've always had my own views about them. So I never had a bad thinking about Russia. I always kind of seen Russia as the country, even before I ever considered coming here and moving here. I always considered it kind of like a traditional country. I was like, this is probably the last white country on earth that's actually headed in the right direction. Even though I can't say it's a total white country. It is a white country, but it's a multicultural country. You get what I'm saying? But for the most part, I would say Russia's a white country, like a white European country. And I always liked what Putin was doing here. I always saw him as kind of like a hard ass, like a strong man, a dude that doesn't take shit, like a leader that I'd want in America. You know what I mean? So for me, I'd always kind of liked him for that aspect. I liked what, that he stood up to the West. I liked that he kind of did his own thing. And so I'd always liked Russia for those reasons too. You know what I mean? It wasn't, that I never really bought the propaganda. There's always been propaganda since I was a young child there. You know what I mean? It's been going on forever. But for me, it never influenced any of my thinking about Russia.
We spoke a little today about this, but according to statistics, the number of prisoners in American prisons is increasing every year. The militarization of the police and a number of absurd laws indicate a clear violation of the rights of American citizens. How can you comment on the situation with respect to civil rights in the United States? And what is the difference between Russia and the United States in the regards?
Civil rights. Well, I mean, actually, recently in America, they've been releasing a lot of people in America because a lot of the liberal Democrat, their stupid laws there, they're releasing a lot of people. Like there's actually been a lot of crimes committed by people that should be in prison that they've released, like especially in California and states like this where the liberals are in power. They had one guy, he's a legal immigrant that shouldn't even have been in the country. They released him and he ended up killing some woman. So in those cases, there's people that shouldn't be out there. But there's some people that get locked up for stupid stuff. I can understand if you're just a minor dude and you get caught with some small amount of drugs, you probably shouldn't be going to prison for 25, 30 years.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. But the guys that are sexual predators, the rapists, people like this, they shouldn't be out. You get what I'm saying? That's the people that be locked up. Civil rights in Russia, what do you mean? Like, how is it different, you mean?
Yeah, comparing to United States.
Well, what I like about here, and I don't know if this really carries on the question, like people just walk up to the police in America. Like you can say whatever you want to American cops. Like I can be like, fuck you, this, that. You can't do that with Russian cops. You're gonna have your ass kicked. You know what I'm saying? You're lucky. You know what I mean? All this stuff of them protesting the police like they've been doing in America isn't going to go down here, and the rioting and the looting and all that. You know what I'm saying? So
is it a
that's,
good thing or is it a bad thing?
I think it's good because it keeps people in line here, because they're not going to jump out of line here. You're not going to see people attacking the Russian police here like they have in America. You get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Uh, so that's a difference, definite difference that I see.
But what we see, for example, about United States, how people get shot by the police, and how many stories do you hear in Russia, according to this way, when we talk about civil rights? How is it
I
different?
don't really ever hear about anyone getting shot by the Russian cops, unless the only time I do is, usually if they're I watched this one thing in Russia, it's usually like FSB or something when they're doing a raid on like terrorists or somebody like this, or like drug smugglers, but not like your average citizen on the street, usually,
Right.
unless somebody that's really crazy and they're out there trying to kill people. Yeah, they'll probably get shot by the police, but you don't hear about it. That was the thing too, is the Russian cops carry the Kalashnikovs here, the big ass, those big guns like AK-47s too.
Yeah.
So I don't think you want to mess with them. But
So,
yeah,
mhm.
a lot
Go
of
ahead.
shooting. Okay.
Yeah, it is. I see your tattoo on your chin, and I believe you do follow the progress of the special military operation of the Russian Federation on the territory of Ukraine. Exactly, yes. So, what do you think are the true causes of this conflict, and was it possible to resolve it peacefully?
I mean, the true causes of the conflict is that I believe it's kind of a proxy war going on between the United States and Russia, if you want to really look at it, because that's the only thing that's keeping Ukraine on their feet right now, is all these weapons the United States and European Union is giving them. But they seem to not take Russia seriously. Russia gave them warnings for how many years about this, talking about this, giving them a way out, everything, saying, do not become part of NATO. Give us the guarantees that you're not going to become part of NATO. This, and they never did. They would never do it. So kind of, why it went down is also, the protection of the people from Donbass. Look what's been going on since 2014. The American media, you don't hear nothing about that in there. What's been going on since 2014, but ever since what went down since February, everybody in the West seems to know what's going on. But if you asked any of these people anything, your average citizen, they probably couldn't even tell you where Ukraine was on the map before this.
Have you seen this video lately when American people get asked on the street where the Ukraine is at and where the Russia is at? And most of them, they pointed that Ukraine was actually Australia, which it was
And they
like.
don't know any,
And
they
then
don't.
they said that Russia is like where the China is at. And it was like only one young lady who said exactly where the countries are at. But the majority of people, they don't even know.
Yeah, so they just jump on whatever the media tells them, that according to them, Russia, Putin's the new Hitler, we're the new
Yeah,
Nazis here, we're
that's good.
going to take,
That's good. You
you know,
mentioned the media. Do you know how the American and European media cover the events in Ukraine?
how did they cover it?
Yeah, like do you read American or European
I mean, I
news?
read all into it. I read all of it. They don't come to a pro-Russian perspective. It's always against Russia. It's Russia, it's Ukraine is the right one, and Ukraine is the victim.
Why do you
That's
think this is happening? Why do they cover it that way?
to demonize Russia.
Yeah.
They're not going to show the truth, especially this fact. You saw recently the thing with the POW, the prison that got bombed recently, and they're trying to say that Russia did this when the facts are that it was done by Ukraine,
Yeah.
but nobody even knows that. They just know what they're told in the media there. All these massacres that have supposedly gone down, I believe the Ukrainians are behind it, but they can say whatever they want, and the American people and that are going to buy it. You get what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Absolutely. Why,
So
in your opinion, for 8 years now, the world community has refused to recognize the fact that the Ukrainian side clearly violated the Minsk agreements by shelling peaceful areas of Donbass and destroying civilian infrastructure?
because they don't want to recognize it and they don't care. You know what I mean? They want to just it all goes back to demonizing Russia, because if you do anything to make Russia look in a positive light, it's wrong in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it really boils a lot down to that. And I don't even think the Minsk agreements would have ever worked anyway. You know, they were never willing to come to the table and follow through on things, you know. They never gave their guarantees on anything. Yeah, they say stuff. You know, it's just like with you remember that airliner that went down, that was shot down? I forget
Yeah.
what it was called. It was a civilian airliner, but you know, you supposedly Ukraine was behind that. There were Ukrainian jets up in the sky that were seen that supposedly shot this thing down. But who do they blame it on? They blame it on the military in the Donetsk. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just a demonization of Russia all the time. But yeah, they don't speak nothing. They don't speak nothing of what went down since 2014 in the media there.
Unfortunately. Share your opinion about the reasons for the spread of ultra-right ideology in Ukraine. Why, in your opinion, does the country that lost millions of its citizens during the World War II support radical ideology now?
I mean, they've always, I don't think it's everybody in Ukraine you would say is far right, but there's always been kind of far right people there, you know, football hooligan type dudes, people like this. That's who what branded into the Azov people. But you got to figure this too, and a lot of people don't talk about this either. Ukraine has always kind of been that way anyway. You got to realize, you know, the Russian history books, they'll say certain things, but when when the Nazis went into Ukraine, they make it sound like, you know, a lot of the in some of the books I read here that people were oppressed. And I went there. A lot of the Ukrainians were celebrating when the Nazis went into Ukraine originally, because they didn't like the communists. You know what I mean? And especially things that happened through the history. So for me, I think a lot of it's always been there too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those feelings, they make it sound like, you know, that's what a lot of the history books, they'll tell you, yeah, the Jews and stuff in Ukraine were rounded up by the Nazis, but they won't talk about us how a lot of the Ukrainian citizens were the ones handing them over to them. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot to do with that, and Bandera and all that in Western Ukraine and all that kind of stuff. You know, so I think it's always been there. There's a far right in Russia too. You know what I mean? But it's a lot of that's died down. There was a major far right here in Russia in the 90s, early 2000s, but a lot of that's been stamped out. But I think it's just always been there in Ukraine. You know what I mean? A lot of them, and a lot of these guys from Azov and stuff, they're not even from Ukraine. They're coming from other countries to come fight there.
Crimes committed by NATO and the United States over the past few decades in most cases still remain unpunished. Tell us, how does American propaganda justify the actions of the American military contingent abroad?
Well, you know, a lot of NATO's done many war crimes that they don't speak about. Belgrade in '99, when they bombed Belgrade, all that stuff in Serbia. Nobody in America even really knows about it. That's the problem. If you told them anything, even about what happened in Serbia and all that, they probably, people that know what's up, like that know history and stuff, maybe would know. But if you talk to the average American citizen, they probably wouldn't even know anything that went on there. You know,
And
Americans
media doesn't talk about it because they're not allowed to talk, or what's going on? Like, why they don't cover those
they
events?
just don't care. You know, I mean, as I told you before, a lot of what you're told in America is a lot of bullshit. My whole life in America, I was told that America won World War II. You know what
Yeah,
I'm
I know
saying?
that. Yeah.
There's nothing mentioned really of what the Soviets did. So it's kind of a perspective from the American perspective. But if you ask most Americans, they would know nothing about Serbia or any of that, what went down there. And it's
How
kind
do
of, America can do what it wants, you know, and it's kind of
yeah.
what they push out.
How do you assess the foreign policy of the current American president? Why, in your opinion, is he ready to allocate billions of dollars for the supply of equipment and weapons to Ukraine, but almost completely ignores the problems inside his country?
Well, the thing is just like him, I'd never supported American foreign policy my whole life. For him, I don't think he cares about Ukraine. It's the fact that Ukraine borders Russia. They want to be up against
Right.
Russia, and they want to be next to Russia, and they want to try to conquer all former Soviet nations. That's what they want to do. They could give two shits about the Ukrainian people or what goes on there. They want to keep arming them, and they want to turn every former Soviet country against Russia. That's the whole thing. You know what I mean? I've never been a supporter of American foreign policy, really anything we've ever done. You know what I mean? And so they're allocating all these weapons, but it's not just him, it's people behind the scenes there. It's all these anti-Russian people in the US fucking government that are behind it. You know what I mean? And it goes back if you really want to research it, there's a guy named Chuck Schumer. He's one of the biggest pieces of shit in the U.S. government, the Senate Majority Leader, and he's anti-Russian. But you can tie it back all to his ancestors too, because if you look at it, he's actually originally from Western Ukraine, his ancestors, but under the time of the Tsars, for instance, under Alexander III, his family was deported out of, a lot of them, they left and they came to America at that time. So they've always had anti-Russian views since then. You know what I mean? So it all boils down to that. All the money they're spending on Ukraine, because that's the only thing they think, if Russia wins, that this is going to be the end of the world for them and everything else. You know what I mean?
There is an opinion that America regularly adds fuel to international conflicts with one sole purpose: to earn as much money as possible by selling weapons and equipment. Do you think the Western establishment consider the Ukrainian conflict just as another investment project?
I don't know about that. My main thing is I think they just want to destroy that country, and they want it to become a democratic, liberal nation like America. That's pretty much, they want to take it over, and they want to turn into another American gas station. That's pretty much what it'll turn into. You know what I'm saying? And they want it to border Russia. This is Russia's sphere of influence, this side of the world. And I try to tell people in America, they have to understand this. NATO and the U.S. have been building military bases all in Eastern Europe, taking these countries over, turning them into NATO nations. It's pretty much like if Russia went to Canada and Mexico and started building military bases on the U.S. border. That's basically what NATO and everyone else has been trying to do to Russia. So obviously, if Russia was going to build military bases on the border of Mexico and Canada, the U.S. would have a major problem with that. So it's the same thing what's happening here. Russia just wants them out of this area. Stay on your side of the fucking world. It's this Russia sphere of influence over here. For me, Ukraine has no right to exist as an independent nation anyway. For me, Ukraine is Russia. I don't see any difference.
Indeed.
It is. Just like Belarus. Yeah, it might have a different thing, but they're Russian people. It's the same thing. So for me, they have no right to exist anyway as that.
Please explain why for so many years Ukrainians have not realized that they're just puppets in the hands of the West, which is trying to fight Russia with their hands.
I don't know. I mean, I think what they want the Western way of life, but they don't realize everything that's going to come with it. I mean, you look at it right now, what's happening there. The liberal agendas are starting to come there. That's the thing. When you let the West influence in, all this liberal stuff comes in. You just saw recently they want to legalize gay marriage now in Ukraine. And that's all because of the West. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, that's what I just saw recently. They want to do that in Kiev or whatever. That was all over the news. And it's like, if they want to be like the West, all that stuff's going to come. But they've had their freedom, I guess you'd say so-called freedom, since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And what have they done with it? Nothing. It's a poor country. There's nothing there. It looks like a third world wasteland. They've wasted their opportunity anyway. Even Putin has said that. So they've done nothing.
Please comment on the cognitive abilities of the current US President Joe Biden. Do you agree with the statement that a number of his actions and statements clearly indicate that it's time for him to resign?
I mean, I think he's just kind of a puppet there anyway. You know what I mean? I think what they want to do, they want to get rid of him because they want the black and Kamala Harris, the vice president. So I think that's what you're eventually going to see. It's all a plan just to get her into office anyway. You know what I mean? So I think he's just he's too old. He's like, what is he? I don't even know how old he is right now. He's in his 80s or late 70s now. But he's not a leader. You know what I mean? He's not somebody that people respect in America. I mean, yeah, the liberal left does, but the majority of conservative Americans, like my mother, hates his ass. My mother liked Trump and people like that.
Yeah.
But I think he's just he's you look at him and he's not respectable.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
You look at him, he has to read off cue cards and all that. I mean, he's scum.
How do you assess the recent searches in the house of former US President Donald Trump? Is the search related to the reluctance of the ruling Democratic Party to allow Trump to participate in the presidential election of 2024?
Well, I mean, I saw the FBI raided his place, but I think it's just one more thing that because they want to try to stop him from running. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's going to stop him. The fact is, he's got a lot of support base from.
That's what I thought too. I think it's gonna help him actually.
I think it is because it's going to bring fuel. More fuel he's going to be able to use. He
Yeah.
has all the Republican people support him majorly, the conservative type people.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to help him more than anything. It's just more stuff. I don't know what they were searching for. They're trying to always bring up the insurrection thing on January 6th, which was a joke too. You know what I mean? So they're always trying to come up with something like that for that. So I don't know what they were looking for, but I think it's going to help him more than anything.
Why does you think the current Ukrainian president refused to sign peace agreements with Russia? What is he waiting for and what is he counting on?
Well, I personally think, I don't even think he's the real decision maker behind any of it. It's basically, you want to say the U.S. and the Western European leaders, they're the ones kind of. I wouldn't even doubt that he's not even in Kiev. They've said that for the longest time that he's not even there. I think he's just kind of he's a puppet for them. You know what I mean? That's the whole thing. It's like I don't think he's going to sign anything.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be smart. As I told you before in our previous conversation, they would be most smart to let Eastern Ukraine go with Russia because those people do not want to be part of Russia. They don't. I mean, I'd say 99.9%, just like probably 100% of the people in Western Ukraine do not want to be part of Russia. So theoretically, if Ukraine was ever to get it, they're going to constantly having people fighting against them, guerrilla fighters, people like this. Nobody in the East wants to be part of Ukraine. Just like nobody in Western Ukraine wants to be part of Russia. Russia doesn't want the Western part. So it's kind of the same thing. You think he would just cede this over. But we just need to get it done. You know what I mean? I think we need to finish it in the East. We need to go down, build the land corridor, as I said before, build it to Crimea, which we already kind of have already. We need to go to Odessa. We need to take that whole city so they have no seaport access, nothing. And then I think after that, they're going to have to come to the terms because Ukraine isn't going to exist as a nation anyway after this. How can they? They're going to lose all their industry. They're going to lose all their ways to import and export things. They're kind of have to be infiltrated into probably Poland or something like that.
Yeah,
You know?
and they're gonna be in a debt, a lot of debt.
Well, I think this is the whole thing too. Why in America you say about Trump they don't want him to run because I'll tell you this: if Trump was in office, none of this would be going on. Trump. I'm not going to say Trump's buddies with Russia, but he's not trying to bring problems, and he didn't want to get involved in these affairs over there. And
Yeah.
there's no way this money would be being handed over like this. And I'll tell you, the American people, a lot of them are questioning why this is happening. People, you got to realize they've thrown these sanctions on Russia. They thought this was going to implode our economy, implode our country in like 2 weeks. That's what the Western media made it sound like. Oh, we have these sanctions right now that Russia's going to collapse in like a week and we're going to be back to like the 90s here and people aren't going to have food and stuff. Right now in America, gas prices are higher than they've ever been. Food prices are higher than they've ever been. The average American person that's not political, that doesn't have an opinion on any of this, they're suffering because of this, just like in Europe. And they're eventually going to get tired. Why are we giving this money for something that we shouldn't be involved in? You know what I'm saying? The only thing, and I'm not even telling you this because I'm political, because I'm 100% in support of Russia. I own a business here. The only thing that's absolutely changed for me here in Russia since all these sanction bullshit started is I maybe have to pay higher prices for certain foods from the West. You know what I'm saying? And shit
Yeah.
like this. Maybe there's certain brands that decided to leave that I can't get here. But really, quality of life has not changed here with all these sanctions that they've thrown on us. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? But they seem to think that, and this is the other thing too. This is how stupid the West is. They seem to think by throwing these sanctions and trying to anger and hurt regular Russian people that that's suddenly going to like change the Russian perspective. They also have the attitude here in the West that they think like regime change here is going to do something. They seem to think like, oh, if the Russian people are going to lose so much here, then they're suddenly going to have some revolution and overthrow Putin or something. But I try to tell them this isn't about Putin. This is the Russian spirit that's about this. For me, if it wasn't, it's not even about what Putin did. The Russian people are in full support of what's going on. I'd say 85%. You get what I'm saying? So whether it's Putin or not, that's what they don't understand there. And
Yes.
that's what they keep thinking. They think like, oh, you remove Putin, like suddenly all Russian people are like, oh my God, we shouldn't have went to Ukraine or that. You get what I'm saying? That's where
Yeah, thank you
they
for
don't
bringing
understand.
this up. It's important because all this just united people even more than we were before.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna. We have a lot of scum and opposition in this country. Don't get me wrong. A lot of younger people that aren't in support and all that. But I'd say the majority of good Russian people are in support. I'd say probably 75, 80%. You know, the other 20% are the opposition or these idiots that have been blinded by Western liberalism and propaganda that are never going to change anyway. But they can all leave Russia. Most of them are leaving anyway.
Exactly. What do you think, when and how will the special military operation of Russia on the territory of Ukraine end? And will there be anything left of Ukraine, or will it completely come under the control of the Russian Federation?
See, me, you know, this is the thing. I've actually been very frustrated over it because I thought this was going to be completed. It should have been completed in 2 or 3 weeks, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
It totally done. You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm hoping in the next couple months it's going to end. I'm hoping. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? See, the thing is, it's kind of like a thing right now. It's like a standstill. The West keeps giving them weapons. Russia advances more. Then Russia figures out how to take out their weapons, and they get more weapons. So it's kind of like they're not really moving either side. You get what I'm saying at this
Mhm.
point? It's just moving here, but I don't know when it's going to end. It should end. I want it to. You know, I want Russia to complete it. As I told you before, I want them to take Kiev. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be possible or not. Many people don't agree with me. I said this before too. I'm kind of controversial, but I'm dead serious on things. I said I want them to fully take the east, go down, take Odessa. If we can't take Kiev, then I posted this out a couple of weeks ago. I said dropping tactical nuclear bomb on Kiev, just like we did in Nagasaki or Hiroshima, that size thing, and just obliterate the city to the ground. If we can't take it, then just drop it to the ground. And I'd say do the same thing, carpet bomb the cities all in Western Ukraine and leave them nothing if we're not going to be able to take it. A lot of people say, oh, what about the innocent people? But I tell you this, I don't think I think most of the people there, they're against Russia anyway.